Ollie, where do you want to start? In the front, in Mail, a story about the Lords, is that right?
That's right, yeah. House of Lords reform, which is something that most viewers at home probably think is completely irrelevant, but still stirs very strong passions in Westminster. You know, I just kind of think it's funny, stories about House of Lords reform, because, you know, it's been going on for 100 years. And if you look forward in 100 years' time, we all know we're going to have an elected chamber eventually. So just why don't they just get on with it? But anyway, all three parties, including the Tories in their manifesto, said that they supported a largely elected House of Lords. But now that it's actually coming down to it, and the proposal sort of spearheaded by the Lib Dems to have 80% elected, 20% non-elected, the Tory backbenchers are kind of up in arms about it, and the Mail says quite hysterically that this could be the biggest dispute between backbenchers and the Tory frontbench since the Maastricht Treaty. So yeah, I mean, Nick Clegg's right about this. All three of them said that they were going to do it, so they should just get on with it, I think.
A story from the FT.
A story from the FT, yeah.
It's an interesting story from the FT, actually, isn't it, about second-hand clothes and a rising market in second-hand clothes.
Yeah, I think this is really fascinating, actually. This is the story that a price of a tonne of used clothes has gone up by £450 in 5 years. Why? Because Poland and Russia and the Czech Republic and Africa are buying our used clothes. These are clothes that used to go into vintage shops or charity shops in this country and put money back into our economy. People are now buying clothes so fast and then using them so disposably that and they want the money because of the recession, that they're giving over bin bags to these companies who buy a bin bag for £5 and then sell them to other countries. It's a really interesting development.
That's very interesting, isn't it? And that's problematic. We talked about charities a moment ago, weren't we? Problematic for charities because, you know, a lot of clothes were previously given to charities, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Although the situation is slightly more complex than that because a lot of charity shops actually then sell the ones they can't sell.
Oh, so you think you're giving to the charity, and the charity, in fact,
then
doesn't put them on the shelf, they sell them on.
If they can't sell them through their charity shops after a while, apparently that is often what happens. They sell to these companies as well, who pay a fiver for a bag of clothes. But, you know, it's just kind of sad, isn't it? Because vintage shops are great, and keeping clothes for a long time are great. I know what you're thinking. He would say that. He's wearing a cheap suit, and I am. This was £20 from a vintage shop. C&A from 1980, look.
But presumably, some clothes are not desirable. I mean, not all clothes are vintage clothes and are worth something to someone. There are clothes that, frankly, no one wants, I presume.
Well, except apparently Polish people do, because a label
it's
like...
It's good they're being used, isn't it?
Well, I mean, labels like Marks & Spencer and BHS, which we see as kind of functional but not necessarily glamorous, are glamorous in Poland, apparently. And you just kind of think, it's obviously all about branding, it's just about mentality. And if people stopped trying to get the cheapest clothes and wear them for a month and then throw them away, maybe we'd have a bit more people wearing their C&A suits from the 80s.
It's a good suit, nothing to argue about that.
There you go.
This story about bin Laden's widows, this is from the Times, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is bin Laden's 3 widows are being rehoused by the bin Laden family in Jeddah. They've been in Pakistan and Yemen, respectively, until now. But they are being flown back and put up by the bin Laden family, who, of course, are very wealthy. They're Saudi Arabia's largest building company. And they're looking after them. You do sort of wonder whether this is out of charity and a feeling of family ties. Bearing in mind Osama was the black sheep of the family for 20 years, I don't think it is that. I think it's that they don't want them selling their stories to the tabloid newspapers, because let's be honest, we'd all like to read that, wouldn't we? Life with bin Laden.
Yeah. Now, the story, The Independent, we mentioned it last time we were here, actually, about the King's speech, and this is the line between movies and theatre and who benefits from what.
Yeah, well, I guess the kind of battle to find the perfect recipe for a hit West End show goes on. People might be surprised to read that The King's Speech, which was this very critically acclaimed play, got a standing ovation on its opening night at the Yves Arnaud Theatre in Guildford, transferred, critically well received, hasn't been doing very well, and is going to close 2 months early, producers announced yesterday. And they might be surprised because, of course, it's a big name, The King's Speech, massive film. And people would have said previously that the things you need to get people on bums on seats in the West End is a star in it, or a star name, like Dirty Dancing, for example, that is adapted from a film that everyone loves. So this seemed to fit the bill perfectly, but it's closing. And the producers say it's because there wasn't enough of a window between the film having come out and the play opening. So it's obviously quite a delicate thing, and I think that's absolutely right, because I probably would have liked to have seen that play in 10 years' time, but, you know, I've seen the film twice in the last 2 years. I'm not going to go and see the play.
What a shame for them. This is an interesting picture, actually, sort of President Obama sitting in the seat that Rosa Parks refused to give up of course, famously in defiance of the race laws.
That's right, yeah.
America.
I mean, what a photo. The bus still exists. I didn't even realise that, but it's in the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan. And Obama, of course, on the campaign trail now, got this photo opportunity. And the thing is, I think Americans have almost forgotten in a way that we haven't, because we still idolise Obama and what he kind of represents in a way that Americans that have to deal with his domestic agenda on a day-to-day basis don't. But I think what a lot of Americans have forgotten is that he can pull out these kind of photo shoots. I mean, that picture says so much, you don't need to say anything else.